I'm driven by a fascination with the sort of the mysterious, beautiful, and terrifying parts of the living body. I'm sure there must be some aspect of the work that has to do with repair or trying to arrest time, or at the very least understand how the body works from the inside out. I'm not an anatomist, but I'm fascinated with the coherence and elegance of the skeleton, and have always loved to look at dance and just to watch people walk and move. You know, when I was a child, my mother contracted polio and lived but was paralyzed from the waist down. So growing up, you know, our house is filled with all sorts of prosthetic appliances, braces, crutches, mechanical. The knee joint on her braces was really brilliantly designed so that she could lock it or unlock it. I'm sure that has something to do with my fascination with making a moving body, a body that moves, that can move, and that can stand up by itself, and that will hold a pose. In my own work, I'm working with wax and plaster and clay. I'm firing the clay. I'm carving wood. I'm machining metals, aluminums, delrins, and wood. So I have a small machine shop here. So it is necessary for a sculptor to have enough space to make a mess. 20 years ago, if you'd asked me what I thought I was doing, I would have said, I just want to see if I can make this work. I want to see if I can make this joint work. I want to see if I can work on this scale and have it all be there, so that I want to see if I can make a piece that the closer you look, the more you can see, that it won't disappoint you, it'll keep on delivering, even if you get right up to within a nose breadth of it. And that's still true too, you know, the whole challenge of can I make my hands do this has been there all along. But now that I look back, I realize I always tell the students not to throw their work out, because then they give up the chance to have, you know, the inevitable epiphanies later in life about what they were really doing. The sculpture that I still have that I made when I was a student it's a chair that you sit in, and then you close around your head the two halves of a miniature theater. So your head is in this box. And if you're not too claustrophobic and sit there for about 40 seconds, a couple of little events happen. At the time I thought, how great, I'll put the viewer on the inside of a small space looking out, instead of on the outside looking into a miniature place. And, you know, and it has a puppet. You know, and the puppet is in an even smaller box within the box. It's in a little closet. The door opens, the puppet moves in the closet, and you see it from close range. Then the puppet got more important to me, and I started paying more attention to making the puppet itself. I thought of it as a kind of very elegant marionette puppet for the pieces that I made then. Then later, it became more mannequin-like and more of an object that I would play or pose, and then it would be that way for the show. So the puppet came to the fore, but as the puppet came to the fore, the figures that I was making were figures that I worked on as much from the inside out as from the outside in. And then the finished pieces were pieces where you could see inside the head. So the hollowness of these things, then when you look at them, you see that they're hollow. And maybe you'll think about the fact that you're hollow too, or sort of hollow. At any rate, you have an inside and an outside, and you're full of stuff. And what is that stuff? And how does it work? How do our living materials give rise to the complex emotional life that we have and the exchanges that we have with one another? So it's, you know, so there's a funny link between that theater for your head and the theater that our heads are. In a way, we still think of our heads as theaters. You know, that neuroscience has told us absolutely our heads aren't theaters. It all gets made out of wetware, but we still persist in feeling that when we close our eyes, we have a private address where we think our thoughts. You know, my career has been very dendritic, and I've pursued branches of knowledge in the hopes of bringing certain skills to my work, but then those pursuits have turned into fascinations in their own right. This was a long time ago. I got out the phone book, I looked up artificial human eyes, and I found a wonderful company in San Francisco with a young son coming on board to take over the business, who was willing to give me some private lessons on, at that point, how to make artificial acrylic eyes. And then I could make those, and did make those, on a small scale for the sculptures. And at that same time, I got fascinated with just the history and the skill and the craft of making a glass eye. How did that start? Who did it? What were the stories behind it? And just got intrigued with it outside of my work. And then over time, I made the acquaintance of an ocularist in New Jersey who was still able to make an artificial eye in glass, really a dying art in this country. He agreed to give me some informal lessons. I took lessons with him for over 10 years until he passed away, and learned only part of the process. I really found that I wouldn't be able to do that and do the rest of the work as well. So it's one of the most interesting failures of my artist's life, and I remain fascinated with that medical craft, that prosthetic craft. So some of what's in here is, a lot of what you see in the studio really has to do with that chapter of my life, and also that chapter in the life of the medical arts as well.
My own start in the making of a movable figure
Really comes more from the puppet world and from a childhood fascination with puppet. But sooner or later, because it was sculpture I was after and not theater, sooner or later the mannequins that I found from various parts of the world ended up being more influential to me, because these were objects that were meant to be posed and then seen in a pose. And then maybe the pose would be changed and they would be seen in the new pose. There's a lovely quote from one of the Psalms in the Bible that goes something like, I will praise thee because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And there's always, I think everyone feels this fear. Everyone, when they stop to think about it, we can't see what's going on inside us. As we age, we start worrying about it more. We become more and more aware that our body doesn't really belong to us, and that we should take good care of it. And so, so that fascination and respect for our physical being, I think, guides the work and has been there all along.